In this interview today, we're talking with Mark Windows at windowsontheworld.net. Mark is a fascinating character with decades of experience. As he goes into in the interview, he's tried and tested a lot of the things that he's talking about. And he's somebody that I've been following for a few years now, 4, maybe 5. And his ability to detect when someone's not being sincere, I think is incredible. If you go to his website, you can see he's almost covered everything and how it all sort of links into this sustainable development and the topic that we discuss in this interview, the new age, which is really interesting. Give it a listen, give it a like, subscribe if you're interested in this sort of content, and hope you enjoy. Really appreciate you coming on. Thank you very much. Whereabouts are you in the world, by the way, at the moment?
Central Eastern Europe, Bulgaria.
You've been there for a while, haven't you?
I've been here for a while, yeah. I came here a couple of years ago when COVID kicked off, and it's very cheap to live here, and I like traveling, so I can do what I need to do. And also, it's very easy to get to different countries from here still.
Yeah.
So within a couple of hours, you can be in Turkey, Greece, Macedonia, Romania, wherever you want, really.
Interesting. So if they try and push any more sort of lockdowns, you've got borders. You can.
Interestingly, I think that the lockdown thing wouldn't work in a place like this as well. You can only really lock down in cities.
Yeah.
I mean, the original lockdown, when it happened, I was living out in Kent, and when you actually went out onto the M2, there was quite a lot of traffic. But most people were sat at home thinking, oh, everyone must be locked in like me. But they weren't. It was just more less traffic on the roads. Yeah.
Yeah, it was more than anything, it was a suggestion and almost like a kind of locking down of the mind. So other than sort of going down to pubs or whatever, but you was only as locked down as you accepted, I think, at the time.
Well, it was a psychological operation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, getting on to... So a few points that I mentioned to you before, and the reason why I contacted you, which sort of ties into the whole COVID thing, because it's really become prevalent since COVID-19. You did 2 shows. You did the Conspiracy Grifters, and also you did a show, this is about 6 years ago, which is incredibly prolific looking back now. So I'd love to sort of touch on your view of what you were talking about all those years ago and how it's actually played out. And both of these topics together are definitely intertwined, as you've said. But ever since COVID-19, it's almost like we've been handed our new, I call them the COVID thought leaders. So it's like this bunch of people, without naming names, a lot of them on Twitter, thousands and thousands of followers out of nowhere. And now they're like I don't know, they're kind of the mind police of the alternative, and they're jumping from one, just like the lefties are, they're jumping from one narrative to the next. It was, as soon as the Ukraine thing happened, they're anti the Ukraine. Then as soon as, the new thing that's going on, they've already picked their side, and it's essentially
choose your side.
That's what it is. It's the dialectic. So as I'm sure you'll go into, all roads lead to Rome. We know what the end goal is. There's one thought process of it being the Great Reset, the WEF, all of this kind of stuff. And the other thing is this sort of the awakening. So there's a meme out there, which is 2 paths. One of them's the Great Reset, thunder, lightning, grey skies, all of this. And the other one's the Great Awakening, rainbows, clouds. But essentially, it is the dialectic. It's 2 almost opposing views, but essentially, as long as you're on one path, you end up in the same position, the same end goal.
Yes, that whole idea of the New Age programming was to get people into a false reality. I did a show recently called The Fourth World, and that dealt with what is beyond the first, second, and third worlds, which is the wilderness of the mind, and these people are in it. So what can you say about that? They've accepted this acquiescence to do nothing, which appeals to their laziness. They've accepted a mishmash of different belief systems that have been thrown together in a blender, and they go from one to the other. They're totally confused, and they have these people who are telling them what they want to hear, which is of no use to them.
Yeah. Have you found something I found myself? I'd say pre-COVID and during COVID, I was quite vocal about crypto. I was quite vocal about anti-establishment, anti-COVID, you know, all of this kind of stuff. I used to get a lot of followers until I
Yes.
lost my account on Twitter. Loads of likes, thousands of likes
Yes.
on some posts. And I'm talking a lot of these posts were tap-ins. They were what you want to hear. It was almost mimicking exactly how you felt. Since I read this book, actually, I was given this book.
That's great. I read that in the 90s when it came out. Yeah.
I wish I read it in the 90s because I only read that during the peak of COVID. And someone told me it was about something different. So I thought, oh, this is going to fit, you know, the whole reset thing. And I started reading it and I was just like, oh my God, this is not at all what I thought it was. And I'm almost seeing this playing out right now, which is this almost pushed awakening. It's almost so in your face and so obvious. And then they've set out, like I said, the thought police already for you. And it's all kind of there. And I noticed since I started calling that out, I don't get any interaction on my Twitter. I get about 3 likes for a post that's taken me a long time to piece together. And it's almost like people don't want to hear the truth. They want to hear what they want to hear, which already fits their fear and narrative and how they feel.
Exactly, which is why my listenership has divided. So when I wrote an article called COVID Protests Social Engineers about the people who'd been brought in to steer people into the dead end and point it out because I knew where a lot of them had come from. I studied protest movements. I studied Occupy. I made films about what happened with Occupy. And what happened in Occupy is the same that happened with Extinction Rebellion. It's the same that happened with all of the COVID protests. So it doesn't matter whether it's for or against the narrative. It's all controlled. So in other words, the globalists need the anti-globalists to implement their policies. So they cover every base. The New Age is the biggest deception of all because the whole point of it is to steer people into this dead end, the wilderness of the mind. And as I said, I did a show about that recently. And I can tell you that your drop in listeners is exactly the same with me. Because when I called this stuff out, a lot of the truthers didn't like it. They want to hear infotainment. There are not many people out there who actually want to do anything. They want to go to protests with their mates, yeah. When it comes down to actually focusing and looking how the system works and knowing how to get solutions, which is what we put out solutions. We're telling you what works. After 15 years of research into communitarianism, the big society onwards, everything they do is simple. Yet none of these people approach it, not one of them, which tells you everything you need to know. So following in the footsteps of people like Ike, all these newbies came along. In fact, one of them set up a kind of network, and she was on my show. And for 2 weeks, she was ranting on about communitarianism. Then the New Age kicked in again, and she decided to listen. I said, don't listen to these con men like Sasha Stone. Don't listen to them. Why are you listening to that? And she could not get her head around because these people do not want solutions. And those aren't the people I want listening. What's the point of going on and waffling? I get sent all this stuff all the time, Jay. And it's nonsense. It's waffle. Okay, they're telling their audience what they already know. And they go, oh, great, we've all woken up. Well, no, you're all in the same mindset. That's not waking up. The only thing that matters is knowing the solution. It's like the law. You can make up things in your head and go, that's not fair, but it's actually the law. And this works in a similar way. So the New Age is funneling all these people into more than a dead end. It's actually a new system. So the New Age and the Truther Industrial Complex is part of that new system. And in order to move on, you have to step outside of it.
Yeah. How do you see this turning into this whole, I know I said, you know, you've got the Great Reset and the Great Awakening, And essentially it all leads to the same end goal, which is factored in. Something you often say is they've factored in the revolutionary spirit, of
Yes.
course. Where do you see this going from here? Because there's a lot of people waking up, they are being captured, but a lot of the things they're talking about is the likes of the banks, the Rothschilds, you know, the allopathic medical system, the pokies that everyone was getting over the last couple of years.
Yes.
So what I'm sort of wondering is how does this play out from there? Because a lot of these establishments, I think, are losing a lot of credibility. And if it is by design, which it certainly feels like it is, I just wonder what's next.
Well, the solution is really simple. It's all in your local council building. Those people in Switzerland and people like Edmund de Rothschild and Maurice Strong, who invented climate change, that's fact. And you can see that in a show called The Fourth World. It's on the YouTube channel, windowsontheworld.net, and also our Odyssey channel. But if you want an education into the system and how it was set up, just listen to that. But people don't want to hear that. They want to pretend that there's this elite that they can't touch, which disempowers them. Well, I'm telling you that you don't need to think about that, because everything the elite are doing is on your doorstep, and that's where you change it. So it's a kind of cop-out talking about the World Economic Forum. I was talking about the World Economic Forum 15 years ago, and then they brought this website out, which was all about the new system they're bringing in, with just essays on. So all of these conspiracy people jump on it, thinking they're telling us what they're doing. Of course they're telling. They're not bothered about that. The system that they've got is run by the City of London. It was already agreed it would be run by the City of London. Britain is the home of sustainable development. What does that tell you? That tells you that the implementations, global to local, are on your doorstep, and they're run out of the City of London. Why do you think UK is going to be net zero? It's the shining example to the world of what this new system is. And they have to make it work. They have to bring people into compliance. And one of the ways they do that is to give them controlled opposition. When I pointed out that people were getting led nowhere, you become public enemy number one. Because when on these truther industrial complex people's YouTube channels, so people sometimes send me links. I thought, what's this nonsense? And then you look on the bottom, and someone might mention my show. They go, I don't listen to him anymore, because I burst their little unicorn bubble, and they do not like it. So the whole point of this is, if you can look at this objectively and simply, there is nothing complicated about what's going on, but they don't want to hear it. I'll tell you why they don't want to hear it, Jay, and how I know they don't want to hear it, because I've been talking about it since 2006.
Yeah. You know, you've gone quite deep into the likes of Blavatsky and Alice Bailey. And one of the things that Alice Bailey was talking about is, as we go into this Aquarian age, this new age, those who aren't consciously aware enough or vibrating on a certain, however it's put, aren't going to make it. And if you look at the experiment that's happened worldwide over the last sort of 3 years, some people took 1 or 2 of the experiments, some have taken 3 or 4. And I look at those people and I think, is that what she's referring to? The people who can't accept that there's new coming, that are willing to almost take themselves out with the old system. Does that make sense?
Yes, it kind of does, but I don't think it's quite that. It's a very good analogy, by the way, because it's very close to that, I think. But what she's actually saying, this new system will come in, which is going to be born out of communism, because they were all communists, these people, right? That's the point. They all wanted Freemasonry to control everything. Yeah. That's what Bailey and Blavatsky were about. Well, look at the UN. The UN opens with the Lucis Trust Invocation of Light. The Lucis Trust, Alice Bailey's publishing company, which was called the Lucifer Trust until it changed its name, has representative seats at the United Nations. So the New Age came out of the United Nations. So the false light is basically people being drawn in to this wilderness of the mind, where it's not borderless countries. Everyone would be locked down, but the minds are borderless. because it means there's no history, there's no past, present, or future. There's just this nothingness called the wilderness of the mind, or the lostness of the mind.
It makes me laugh.
And that's what she's referring to.
You've got some people that are calling out the Masons and calling out the Jesuits or whatever.
Jay, this is really funny. I'm calling out the Jesuits. Are they bothered? I don't think so. I'm calling out the Freemasons. No, you're not. You're talking about them. I've covered Freemasonry in great detail, but nobody talks about Martinism. Why is that then? Because that's the theurgical black magic branch of Freemasonry. And the Martinists have lodges all over Europe.
Yeah.
They are the occult branch of the Order of the Rose Cross. And I've gone into it all. It's all BS. It's to keep people on a treadmill for the rest of their lives, going round and round in a circle and achieving nothing but being very useful idiots. That's all Freemasonry is. And at the very top, there are people making these decisions, of course. Like the top of the Order of the Rose Cross, for instance, you've got, they said there would be 12 illumined brothers. And the 13th brother is hidden behind the 12, like billiard balls, snooker balls. So it's a triangle of people, and you can't see who's at the back, you see, because everyone's facing front. So the people out front are the ones you're meant to see. So all of this stuff, I don't think is very complicated. What it is, people jump from one thing to the other, and they seem to think that the system that's being imposed is in some way complicated. Well, it wouldn't work in every country in the world if it was complicated. It couldn't. So it can't be complicated. So the occult nature of it, I was very interested in. But it's allegorical waffle based on Kabbalah. And it's a nonsense to keep the idiots constantly guessing and constantly on the hamster wheel of wanting more and more. The people at the top know that.
Yeah, and what they don't realise is they're sort of bringing light to the Masons, but what they're also doing is perpetuating their plan, which is the awakening. And it is this kind of new age, you know, when you read that book I told you about, The New World Order,
yes,
he's reading the works of Pike, etc., where they're actually talking about bringing this false light. So essentially you're you know, calling these people out, but you're actually doing their work.
Exactly. But the other thing is, none of them are talking about how the system works. What is the point of talking about Freemasonry now? Freemasonry is no longer needed because the infiltration of every organization with NGOs throughout the world is complete. Freemasonry doesn't need to be there anymore. It might be on a local level with backhanders and planning and stuff like that, but all this stuff is out in the open now. This is what I keep saying. I get sent all this stuff. There are thousands of NGOs that the councils are in bed with who are dictating the policies that you're paying for. That's the issue. It doesn't matter what they're doing. You can see what they're doing at a higher level. But the point is that nobody seems to want the solution. And that is puzzling to me because we've given them the solution. So I came to the conclusion, because I was very much on board with the alternative media when it started, because I was actually one of the first ones doing it in the UK. And the reason people haven't heard of me is because I was successful at what I was doing, you see. I never managed to get a big following because I realized I was learning how things were changing in the court. I was winning court cases. I brought down Crime Stoppers in the UK. Everyone was taken off there. They had to redesign the website. Done a lot of things like that. No alternative media or mainstream media will touch it. Why? These are big things. These are big things that are very important. So
you're not just skipping over the top. You're actually making a...
Yes. And that was what I got very frustrated with it, because I couldn't work it out for a long time. I thought, why is it? Why is it these people are seemingly getting promoted and getting through everywhere? Because they're not saying anything. It took me a while, because I joined a thing called the People's Voice TV, which David Icke set up with this business partner. The business partner ran off with, well, he ran off. Let's just leave it at that. But that was imploded by design. I can talk about it all night long, but it's boring. It's been and gone. But that place was fully infiltrated. I'd already seen the infiltration. The infiltration of that place was by people I'd seen infiltrate Occupy and these other protest groups. So I became a bit of an expert on the infiltration thing. And I found that it's quite sinister. It's quite sinister, but it's actually very simple. And this is what people didn't seem to want to hear. I mean, we did a film called Inside Occupying the Bank of Ideas, which was this fake squat set up in the City of London. Who squats in the City of London? Nobody, you know. And I found out from the templates of how they run this, how the protest groups are run, but also how the COVID protests were run. It's the same people doing the same thing. So when I went to Trafalgar Square, and you see all these people, the PA wasn't adequate, and then Ike gets up and spouts his rhetoric, which doesn't say anything really, apart from about himself, you know. And then
for one of them, it was, oh my God.
Oh, pathetic. But then Heiko Schöning, the German doctor, turns up in a suit, looking charismatic and calling the whole thing out. The handcuffs are on straight away. He was not allowed anywhere near that stage. And that tells you everything you need to know. So if people are still worshipping these idiots, giving them money, listening to them night after night, they're going nowhere. I used to listen to Alex Jones years ago, and it's the same bloody pattern. But Jones actually made some good films. He did do some good stuff. And I know the person who employed him, RBN. He was originally on Republic Broadcasting Network. And I worked on Republic Broadcasting Network because that's out of Austin, Texas. And so the fella who actually discovered Alex Jones, he's died now, actually. He died a couple of years ago. But that was all out of Austin, Texas. And yes, it's the shock jock thing, right? That's what it was.
Yeah.
But there was some good information. But then it just deteriorated. Because once you know that, you know, how many times do you want to be told that 9/11 was an inside job, for instance? And somebody sent me a video recently from America. And these guys are going, America's turning into a police state. I mean, where have you been for the last 25 years? And why are you making the film that Alex Jones put out 20 years ago?
Yeah.
You see, it's just on repeat. And these people don't seem to have anything to say, and they all get the same people on.
Yeah. Yeah. I was looking at things like, say, COVID, you had the 7/7 bombing here, you had 9/11, all of these things. So if you speak to anyone who's sort of just started to wake up, they'll say it's all about surveillance. It's, you know, it's this, it's that. I'm starting to look at things a little bit differently, as it's almost an initiation. Yeah. More people have woke up. If you speak to anyone who's woken up, what was it that, you know, made you start asking questions? 9/11, 7/7, COVID. I don't think that these things were like an accident and they made it that obvious for no reason. And then, like we said earlier, it leads you into these people. And I think when people do wake up, they don't realize that sort of waking up is a continuous process. And you always have to critique yourself and ask, like, have I learned? Have I grown? Am I just accepting what I'm being told? And I think a lot of people, they don't have that level of awareness, and they kind of get stuck in a place, like we said, and they create that, you know, listening to Alex Jones 10 years later. Why? What exactly are you learning? It's just nothing. It's entertainment, as you say. It's a show, and it is quite entertaining. I used to listen back in the day when he interviewed Ike, you know, all those years ago. Those interviews were great. Sometimes I dip back in because it's more nostalgia than anything. But what are you learning? And
nothing.
Yeah, it's interesting
how many of these people are actually talking about what matters? None of them. None of them. That's why we're having this conversation, I suspect. But the point is that there's an archive that I've been working on for so many years, and we've done so much stuff. And then this, as you say, in 2019, when the COVID thing happened, 2020, all these grifters came out. All the grifters came out. There wasn't as many grifters before 2020, but after they all came out of the woodwork, and it's absolutely appalling. And I've had to go head to head with a few of them because they say things. Well, you can't say that. That's, you know, they think it's a game. You see, that's what annoys me. It's a game to them. It's how many Patreon subscribers they've got. It's how many hits they're getting on YouTube. I never saw it as a game. I saw it as a vocation to actually really get down to the truth with no BS and put it out there.
Yeah.
And if you do that, you do get attention and you do get problems. And that's the point. So all of these people who are doing these podcasts, do you think that the people who are running this system give a damn about what they're saying? Because none of them have got a clue how anything works. So they can talk about it all day long. All this they're doing is going to the World Economic Forum website, or they're saying they're going to do this, they're going to do that. Well, it's all in your local plan anyway. That's where it's all on your doorstep. And this is what I never understood, that if people want to take back control, they do it locally. It's dead simple. It's absolutely simple.
Yeah. So obviously we're looking at the kind of physical side of this, the physical control and the new systems, and as you've said loads of times before, is corporate structure. Where do you stand on the kind of spiritual element of this? Because as I was saying before, when you look at people that are calling out this sort of false controlled awakening of a new age, a lot of the time they are Christian, and they talk about the false light, and we know that I was confused her name, Blavatsky. She talks about the god of the Masons essentially is Lucifer, the light bearer. And essentially what this is
well, she says it is us. She says Lucifer is us. It is our light. That's what she actually says.
Yeah. Do you think she means our light in the sense of us, or our light in the sense of awakening?
No, I think she's referring to it as being Luciferian, because that's how they saw it all came out of the Enlightenment, didn't it? So these people like Blavatsky were later than that. And all she was doing was dipping into Eastern religions, which were new to the West. So she gave a bit of Hinduism, a bit of Buddhism. They started channeling, and the rest is history, literally. So the whole point is that when you approach this, you have to go, okay, so what would oppose what these people are doing? What would actually oppose it? And I put a show out a while ago called The Force They Fear. And it's something that everybody should look at. I'll just leave it there because it describes the power that early Christians had. And I'm not talking about the Roman Catholic Church. I'm talking about the way, this group. And the whole purpose of Freemasonry for the last 2,000 years has been to destroy that force, because they can't quite destroy it. I'm interested in things that work, you see, Jay. I'm not interested in people's arguments over religion. I'm only interested in, why are they scared of that then? Why? Let's have a look at this. And where's your inner integrity? Where does that come from? You see, the whole point of the New Age is it collectivizes people. It collectivizes them into what they call connected consciousness, right? That fits exactly with the globalist system, because they want rights to be enforced collectively, because all rights come from individual rights. There's no such thing as community or collective rights, because all rights have to come from the rights of one person. Do you have a right to do that or not? Once you get people into collective consciousness, basically you can control them, which is what the gurus do. There was a great film called Gods of the New Age, and that is from a Christian perspective, but it was a woman who was born in India. And she describes how this Hinduism and Buddhism for Westerners was marketed with self-help. So it's a mixture of Blavatsky, Bailey, and Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. That's where it all came from, actually, when you look at it. And then it expanded out into self-development. And then we get this word interconnectedness. And then, of course, they're all thinking about the Celestine prophecy, and we're all going to have these amazing coincidences and everything's going to join up. Well, in fact, that is true, but not the way they're doing it, because what they're doing is they're opening themselves up through fantasy. You see, that this is the point. And these New Agers, it's like I did talks around the UK, and some of them would turn up and they'd go, oh, it's a bit negative.
Mm.
So it's a bit negative giving you the solution about how to go into your local council and sort things out. That's negative. Well, okay, that's negative then. So the solution is negative.
You
You
can't
see?
think about it because you'll attract it and you'll.
That's right. The law of attraction. I mean, I went into this stuff, Jay. You probably have as well. I
Yeah.
went into this stuff for the past 30 or 40 years. I used to buy the books. Then I realized, wait a minute, there's a scam going on here. There's an absolute scam. And I started to put it all together. And yes, I think adequately we've described it in the shows, because the thing is that the new age is the most prevalent thing. It is the enemy of inner truth. It is the enemy of inner truth and integrity. Because what people do is they sell out their own integrity on the back of a kind of gift shop mentality.
Mm.
And I've seen it. You know, it's all about narcissism, actually.
Yeah.
The cult of the self.
Yeah. I think so as you do get into all of this stuff, you do come across the law of attraction and things like this. I mean, I over years and years of looking into it, I sort of sum it up in one phrase, which is you don't get what you want, you get what you are. So essentially, if you want to create a better reality around you, because your life is almost like a mirror of your inner sanctum reflecting back at you in a sense. So if you change what you are inside, you will change externally, right?
Well, you can only change yourself, can't you? I mean, this is the thing. But people, yeah, if they get collectivized, they can't do that at all. But it is down to inner integrity. And it all comes down to, there is a natural law. But the other thing is that, say the more you put out that's true, the more negativity is going to come back to you. So you have to protect yourself. And that's what these new agers don't get. They've been told that, because what it does, it keeps them in arrested development so that they never actually do anything, but they think they are doing something. But they wouldn't dream of actually getting involved and doing something which meant that possibly you might get a bit of a bad reaction. Because if you put anything out that is useful, you will get a bad reaction, because that is the system we're in, right? I mean, people don't realize in the UK, especially, how corrupt it is. It is the most corrupt country in the world, full stop.
Yeah.
But the corruption is hidden. And most people, they don't touch the barrier where you're going to get some reaction. And once you do, you will know, because they have lots of people employed, even in local government, to target you. That's what the Saul Alinsky rules were for. I've been a targeted individual. I don't go around saying I'm a targeted individual. I was attacked by a load of radical revolutionaries, shall we call them, for the new system, because I was helping out a charity. And these people broke into the building, stole the contents, threatened everyone's lives. The police didn't touch them because it got put into community policing. Now, this is happening everywhere, this sort of stuff. And for people to be blind to what's going on in their own local areas now is suicide, because it's being built around them.
Yeah. I mean, where I live in Milton Keynes, oh my.
Oh yeah, I've been there.
Yeah.
Land of many roundabouts.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, though, don't knock it, because
I'm not knocking it. I just said it's the land of many roundabouts.
if I go somewhere else, I'm like, one-way roads and oh god. But they've got, I think Elon Musk is here now today, doing AI convention with Rishi Sunak and all the governments, etc. So Milton Keynes is definitely going to be one of these smart cities.
Definitely. Well, it was a garden city originally, wasn't it? It was like it was a follow-on from the garden cities of the 60s. Well, the interesting thing about Milton Keynes is it was originally going to have a monorail all the way through, wasn't it? It was going to have a monorail, and they cancelled that in favour of everybody having people living in cul-de-sacs, and having room for their cars. So what they're doing now is the opposite of Milton Keynes, actually, because Milton Keynes was based around people having cars, I believe.
Yeah. One interesting thing with Milton Keynes is the Midsummer Boulevard.
Right,
So on the summer solstice, the sun sets over the Midsummer Boulevard.
right.
So this is the main street that goes straight through the centre of Milton Keynes. So there's a at
So
the
in
end
other
of
words, they should stop going to Stonehenge and come to Milton Keynes.
oh, you do. If you
That would be
follow
great.
Midsummer Boulevard, there's a
Yeah,
mini Stonehenge, and
yeah.
also there's a pyramid. It's called the Pyramid of Light. Really
Oh,
interesting.
right.
Yeah, if
Yes. Well,
you go up there on summer solstice, there's all people doing yoga. It's weird. There's something going on.
well, that is funny, but well, that's totally new age, isn't it? But I mean, I knew a bit about that. I did a lot of gigs in Milton Keynes at one point when I
Yeah.
was doing my act, my show, singing and that. I had to do quite a lot of gigs up there.
Yeah,
And
was it good? Because it seems to be quite soulless when it comes to, I'd say, entertainment in that sense. There's not a lot of
yes,
culture here. It's kind
no,
of
well,
it's a manufactured like corporate culture almost.
yes, yeah. Well, I mean, they appreciated me there. I did quite a lot of gigs in Milton Keynes, but personally, I wouldn't want to live there. But
Yeah,
it's probably got its advantages. Probably better than most parts of London now.
I've actually tried to leave 3 times in the last like 5 years,
And you couldn't get past the what's it called, the H5 Portway. The
well,
H5 Portway. Have they renamed it yet?
every time I've tried to get away, some absolute random thing has just got in my way and stopped me. So I've kind of succumbed to the idea that I think I'm just meant to be here for now. But I've got a love-hate relationship with it for all the reasons I've just said. I was going to say, so obviously, if you're putting out certain content, right, there's going to be physical attacks. You do a lot talking about with Jerry Marzinski, right? Is one of the guys, and I've seen you have loads of different interviews about this. But the whole kind of demonic attachment and the demonic attack, right? When I started looking into the New Age originally, this was 3 years ago, I kept getting sleep paralysis. And I'm talking
Right.
to the point 2 or 3 times a week. Me and the missus, we actually had a little thing where, if you hear me do this, wake me up. And I started
Right.
to learn how to actually guide myself out of it as well.
Yes. Yes, you can do. Yes.
And I don't know, I sort of moved on, and I was quite stressed at the time. It's very stressful information when it sort of shatters your comfort blanket of the alternative world, or the second net, as I've heard it called. So it's quite negative. I was quite stressed at the time as well. So I didn't know whether to kind of put it down to being stressed or if there was some sort of attack. I don't know, but it happened a lot. And some of the attacks were actually quite profound. Like whilst I was in like a hazy state, I actually saw an entity run across the room, and it felt like it grabbed me. And then
There's something in the place then. Yeah, I was going to ask you whether you saw anything or there was any indication. I mean, it's happened to me. It happened to me years ago, so I know what you mean.
Yeah,
And now, as you say, you can get rid of it. But when I used to go into deep catalepsy, which you can do, you can sort of train yourself to do it. It means that your body's completely asleep, but your mind's awake. It's like a meditational state, really. People are very confused about what meditation actually is. But if you can get yourself down to these very low states of you've got alpha, beta, theta, and delta waves, yeah. So once you get into 0 to 4 hertz, you're getting into a place where your body is actually asleep, and that's where the catalepsy can come in. So your body, this is what happens to people, and sometimes they'll wake up and they'll be paralyzed. Yes, because your body's asleep. You just have to wake it up again. But I used to really like that because it's the most deep and intense form of relaxation. So I found out how to do it, and I have actually had to encounter things of like psychic attacks during that happened. It happened twice, actually. It happened twice. So it's not happened that much, but you have to be aware of that. Something was trying to suck me in, suck my energy. And so these things are real. And I got in touch with Jerry Marzinski because I heard a podcast he did about 10 years called Demons Are Real. And I just couldn't believe what he was talking about because it fitted in so perfectly with what I thought about some of the people. I knew several people who had paranoid schizophrenia, and one of them used to front a band, and he's dead now, poor bloke, but he was quite a good musician. But I got to know him, and I always felt that there was somebody else in the room when he was there. Something else was in the room with him, or coming through him. It was a very strong feeling. And I don't think he never managed to cure himself. He was just on the depot injections, but it wasn't a danger to anybody.
Yeah.
But apparently he committed suicide, which is
Wow.
very sad. But yeah, I got in touch with Jerry because somebody who was close to me was definitely possessed with a very strong demon.
Yeah.
And that's when I started to talk to Jerry, and we've been in touch ever since.
Yeah.
So we've covered quite a lot on that, and it's an area, I think it's the area that's key, because to be aware and to develop awareness of this field of negativity that is out there. I mean, people bring it in through them, you see. That's the problem.
Yeah.
That these entities will attach themselves to people who are vulnerable or who accept them. So the New Age is almost like a way of opening up to that.
Yeah.
Because they say, "Oh, I'm channeling." What are you channeling? Well, it told me it's my spirit guide. Well, these things tell you anything they want. They don't tell you anything that's true usually.
Yeah, that's what worries me a bit about parts of the Bible, because I mean, where did that information come from? Maybe I'm missing something, but if
they knew about it,
if any of it's channeled, who's channeling it? I know a lot of Ike's information in the early stages. I think he talked about the Godhead and all of this sort of stuff.
Oh yeah, well, he was totally into Alice Bailey. He copied. There's a great film called David Icke Debunked by Chris White. If you've not seen it, watch it. That's where all his early ideas came from, Alice Bailey.
Yeah. So this is why you can't trust any of it. I often think as well, like this whole sort of as above, so below. The system here is so controlled, and we know that there's, and this is proof of like a spiritual side of things to me, is this whole demonic thing, because I've seen it. I've legitimately seen it.
Yeah.
It makes me think, is it this controlled on the other side? And it sort of leads me to this whole kind of Gnostic idea, which obviously is sort of fits within the New Age as well. What was it? Do you have many views on sort of Gnosticism and this whole kind of idea of,
Depends what you mean by Gnosticism, because the word Gnosticism was attached to some of the early Christian writings. So it's a very complex area. What they did is they've kind of mixed it up now. So I think the meaning of it has changed, because the Gnostics were usually people who weren't considered to be legitimately part of Christianity, but I don't think that's true, because if you look at the Nag Hammadi scripts, the Nag Hammadi is a series of 13 codices that were found in Qumran, and in 1945, I think, or 48, because the dead they were found a few years after the Dead Sea Scrolls.
Yeah,
and that was another interesting thing, because the Dead Sea Scrolls, they were bought and sold for ages, and a lot of them actually turned into dust. There's a very interesting book about it, because Israel was trying to get hold of them, and they were originally in Syria, and they fought over it. It's an interesting thing. But the Nag Hammadi, they have the Gospels in, you see. Now the Gospels in the Nag Hammadi, I find fascinating. I read it, and it is the work of early Christians, you see. So some people will say that the Gnostics aren't Christian. That's not true, because the definition of it has to be looked at as to what you actually mean. So there's the Gospel of John in there, Gospel of Thomas, there's a Gospel of Mary, and they're all very interesting, you know. And there's also a lot of the stuff about the rulers, the archons, the rulers mold Adam. It was all about different versions of the Genesis story, and you can see how it was repeated. Some of them were in Greek, some in Aramaic, few in Hebrew, but I think it was mainly in Greek. So we don't know a lot about that particular period, you see. Yeah. Because we get most of it from the Romans. This is the problem. So if you're going back pre-Roman, you have to dig yourself and see what you can find, because the Romans, well, they relocated the whole of Christianity anyway. It was completely relocated by Constantine. And we've done a lot of work on that. I'm working on a film at the moment called Shattered Isles, which is about Britain and why Britain was the center of the ancient Christianity. So it's not what people think. Yeah.
You mentioned before about the whole kind of Atlantis thing, and potentially being well, linking with the shattered isles of.
Yeah, the Atlantis thing I think could be a bit of a red herring because there's so many different versions of where it could be.
Yeah, yeah.
And they found that's a tectonic plate the size of a continent recently, which had been pushed down between two other plates. So this is why I find catastrophism incredibly interesting, because the academic world is into this uniformity. But if you look at the world, all you have to do is look at a map of the world. Pangaea has been clearly smashed apart. It's been smashed to pieces because that must have been one landmass originally.
Yeah.
And we're working on the stuff Comins Beaumont at the moment, and he was an author and a journalist, and he died in the 1950s. And when I first heard some of his theories, I wasn't convinced at all. But now I'm really finding it useful in decoding the real history of ancient Britain and what it was about and why it's having done to it what is being done now. Why is it being psychologically destroyed? Why is its history being erased, which it is?
Yeah. And I think it's about to go on steroids with this whole thing with Hamas. And, you know, if you look at, without going too much into it, this whole migration over the last, 20 odd years, I'm just waiting for the next terror attack. And I think
the terror attacks kind of have a use. Their drivers have changed.
Yeah,
drivers. So
and it would just create that ultimate fear of who's next door to me, who lives next door to me, when's the next one.
Yes, but the councils are part of this of the migration, because the NGOs that are bringing all the green technology are also bringing in the migrants. People don't know this. People go, what? Yes, because it's one agenda. The whole idea is that they want to wipe out places where there can be strongholds of opposition. And how do you do that without a war? You do it by infiltration. And Britain is fully infiltrated and nobody talks about it.
Well, you're not allowed to talk about it.
These change, you can talk about it. I've been talking about it for 20 years. I'm still here. But the point is that people, if you say, you talk about the UN. The UN's been training hundreds of thousands of these people, but when you go into the NGOs, which is what the whole thing's about, the world it's a decentralized form of governance, which is unseen to the public. So what that means is you've got documents like Our Common Future, which said a new system of governance is required, and countries will be required to adopt it. So when people go and vote for different parties, they don't see that the infiltration is through this sustainable development. Why do you think the councils are getting away with what they're getting away with? Because they're going to devolve to the councils. The councils are going to be the government, and they've been acting as though they were the government for a long time.
Yeah. Oh, and the thing is that we're too far gone now.
Well, I don't know, because it could be turned around tomorrow.
But what I mean by is the way that we've been infiltrated, especially our culture as well. I think people look past the culture side of things, especially when you get into the new agey stuff. It's like we're all one, we're all connected. There is no, no borders. But there's something in it, especially when I spent quite a lot of time looking into like the Germanic people as well, and there's definitely something there as well. There's a reason why they want to completely destroy your cultural values.
Of course.
There's definitely something in the whole Christian thing as well. I kind of haven't really fully pieced that together, but yeah, you can see it. You can absolutely see it going on. I was going to ask as well. We kind of got back onto the whole sustainable thing, but I was enjoying the spiritual talk. I've been trying to.
Well, it's all part of the same thing, because ultimately, if you're trying to find the inner truth and how things work, then you have to go down the route of looking at how the system works.
Yeah. Because
that's where you're being challenged. That's where these demons are coming in. They're coming in through that system. Yeah. So that is the spiritual battle. The spiritual battle is against these people who are indoctrinated and trained and are leading you into your own slavery.
Yeah. How do you feel that this all comes together in the end? Because we've got Islam is obviously very prominent. It's becoming more prominent in the West. Very polarized. I feel like they're going for Islam at the minute. The whole thing with the World Cup, I mean, it was just an absolute, it was unbelievable. It was just going on about human rights and all of this stuff, but you're over there taking their money. It was so gross. The whole thing was horrendous. And then you've got, the whole atheistic thing, nihilism. Christianity's been infiltrated a long time ago. And then obviously you've got this new age.
Well, the church in the UK, the Church of England, is not a church. It's an infiltration program of change agents. I mean, none of these people have any spiritual power. They've put in the weakest people who are there to subvert and assimilate everybody. So you can't talk about the church because there isn't one. You'd have to start a new one. Or your church can be within yourself, which is where it should be. But they destroyed, the Church of England destroyed Christianity a long time ago. And the Catholic thing is different and the same because the Vatican are more on board with the agenda than anyone on the planet.
Yeah.
So, but that's the point. So people can't go to what they now see as the physical church unless you're very lucky. You might find that there's one person who's got some spiritual power in the church, but I've never seen it.
Yeah.
They're all a bunch of change agents now, unfortunately. Well, look at the Archbishop of Canterbury, Welby. I mean, what a ridiculous idea that is, having someone like him.
Yeah. Well, it's almost like a spit in the face now. This is what I mean by this sort of controlled awakening. It's almost so obvious now.
Yes.
And yeah, so how do you see, because I think Alice Bailey was talking about how Islam could quite easily sort of go with this whole kind of new agey.
Well, the idea was it was the confluence of all the religions, wasn't it, really, to bring them together, which is the UN's aim, of course. It's to wipe out identity religion. But the point is that they use a lot of this stuff for the divide and rule. That's the point. So while people are ranting about the amount of Muslims in the country, they're missing the point, because the people who are doing it are the ones you should go for. You don't blame the immigrants. It's got nothing to do with them.
Yeah, I think that's where things are going to go. That's where they want you to blame.
That's where they want you to go. MI5 and the intelligence services are pushing this what they call far right, which of course doesn't exist. So they have to manufacture it. So what they do is they use these Telegram groups, which is where obviously all the surveillance is on Telegram, right? They use these Telegram groups, go, oh, it's encrypted. They have these people baiting people to say things on Telegram so they can arrest them because they've got the online harms bill now. There's going to be loads of people done for that. So they can put the fear of God into the rest of the country by a few idiots going, I'm going to set a light to a mosque. Do you see what I mean? And that's how Hope Not Hate trapped that fella from National Action, by the way, because Hope Not Hate is one of the biggest subversive Marxist organizations in the UK. Yeah, and they've had a go at me as well, but they can't box clever with these people, and you're all right. They can't really go for you, but they can still defame you. Yeah, but that was about somebody, a young lad, 23 years old, in a pub, drunk, said, "I'd kill that MP." He's in jail now. And they said, we went undercover. No, they didn't. What they did is they coerced somebody under the influence of alcohol to say something that most people say in the pub every bloody night. Yeah. So that's what it is. It's the intelligence services that are using this. Yeah. There's definitely a push back to the right. Over COVID, we were so politically left. It was incredible. Now with like Elon Musk taking over Twitter, which is apparently a good thing. And now he's talking about how it's going to be a payment system like WePay. They're all into crypto as well. That also terrifies me. Yeah. Essentially, what they're doing in the name of freedom, they're actually pushing the actual agenda and promoting exactly what they don't want
but they think that they're going to make a few quid in the process of doing it. It blows my mind.
I don't know why people are distracted by people like him. Why would anyone even be interested in him? It boggles my mind. Why is anyone interested in him?
Yeah, well,
ask yourself, what are you interested in him for? What's he bringing to the table? Nothing.
No.
Nothing.
Well, he's sort of telling you what he's bringing to the table, which is exactly what you don't want.
Exactly.
Same as Russell Brand. I always think, because I speak to a lot of people who are open-minded to what's going on, but they can't see this topic. It just is. I'm hoping that this podcast becomes the one that I can share with people to say, listen to this, and just go.
Well, Brand. Well, let's have a look at Brand. He knows nothing about anything.
Yeah.
He's a moron. He tries to sound intelligent. He has nothing to say. Then he leans back and he looks demonically possessed and challenges you to say something because he hasn't got anything to say. He has nothing to say. He's never had anything to say. He brought out a book called Revolution, didn't he? What is he? He's a communist, right?
Oh, he's a Marxist.
A communist.
Yeah.
Yes.
Claims Marxist. Yeah.
And he's a communitarian because he believes in communitarianism. So the people who follow him, I mean, anyone who listens to anything he says is an idiot. End of. If someone tells me they listen to him, I say, bye. No way. No way.
He's essentially the walking, talking agenda. The veganism.
Yeah, but also it's
chakras.
But he has nothing to say. He has no knowledge about anything. So why would you listen to someone with no knowledge who spouts crap off the top of his head?
Yeah.
He has nothing to say. It's the epitome of it, that is.
Yeah.
The wilderness of the mind is him. That is the wilderness of the mind.
It's that sort of idol worship, because he's got a following and he's saying things that rhyme with what you believe. I don't know. I just see a lot of people falling into that kind of trap.
Well, if they're in arrested development now and they don't get out of it, they will be in arrested development for the rest of their lives. It's as simple as that. If you want to stay in arrested development, listen to idiots like him.
Yeah.
End of. If you don't, read some good books, like the one you mentioned. It was written a long time ago, but it's actually, there's so many good things you can look at. You know, what about Eustace Mullins? What about him? One of the best researchers on the planet. He exposed the Federal Reserve before anybody else. He was hounded till the day he died for doing it.
Yeah.
I mean, and he never threatened anybody. He never did anything. But he tells you how things work. He was the first one to talk about vaccination. See, the thing is, all these new truthers, they've got no history. They're not looking at anything. When I was doing it, I'm not generalizing. I'm trying not to generalize, okay? But when I started getting into this, I was reading all that, like the one you mentioned, New World. I had all those books, and I was putting it together. And by the time I saw this new system coming around in about 2008, 2010, I understood it completely.
Mm.
And yeah, it's mind-boggling that people are still at that low level, because if they're at there now, it is too late for them. If they're still listening to rubbish like that, it's far too late for them. They're gone.
It's almost like fast food information now. It's back then you'd take your time, you'd understand a topic, and you'd move on to the next. But now it's like, right, this agenda, now this, then it's this, and it's this, and it's, if you follow these people, you've literally got no time to actually reflect and sort of look at the hidden hand behind what's going on. It's just, you're just giving your energy and just following these people just talking complete fucking bullshit.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, because I read quite a lot and I am very concise about what I say, I try and be as coherent as possible. When I put an idiot like Russell Brand on, it's offensive to actually listen to it to start with, because he's inarticulate. He sounds like some girl having a fit. There's no focus to anything he says. Yeah. And then he's got that demonic look, and that, I mean, that's already been reported, hasn't it? That these girls have said that there's someone else in there, you know. Definitely. Well, he's an addict. Why would you bother with somebody like that? Yeah. Why would anyone bother with anyone like him? It's degrading your own intellect to listen to crap like that. The other one's Jordan Peterson. He's exactly the same. Pound shop psychological BS for the self-help generation. And what a shill he is. He's the biggest one on the planet. He is absolute dreadful. You know, why are people following these false messiahs, these idiots? It's just mind-boggling to me.
Yeah, I think especially now
Mm.
after everything that's happened, he was pushing the whole vaccination thing at one point, and now it's just this whole thing on Twitter about essentially he's trying to shut down freedom of speech. That's what he's doing on there.
Well, he's an agent for them. He's an agent for the agenda, but also he has nothing to say either. He knows nothing about anything.
Yeah.
I mean, and I can say that with some qualification because I've listened to what he said, and why would you listen to pound shop psychology mixed with self-help with some kind of little alt-right bits put in? I mean, it's nonsense. He's he's been in institutions all his life. He's never had a proper job.
Yeah.
He's worked in psychology for his whole life. Why would you respect somebody who's done that?
Yeah.
I'd respect somebody who's worked in a shop all their life, but I wouldn't respect someone who's been in an institution having stupid little banal conversations with his students for his whole bloody life.
Yeah, well, he got famous from arguing with feminists on the news.
Oh yeah, it's such a
it's entertaining, but
well, it's missing the whole point because he's not going to the root of what the problem is.
Yeah,
it's just the surface. It's just the chatter again. Waste of time. Complete waste of time. I mean, the whole point is about all these identity groups. It doesn't matter it's Black Lives Matter, Femen, or whatever they are. There's thousands of them. They're all created. This is the artificial world of protest. So it doesn't matter. The protests are given to you. You have your banners. Go and stand in a park, hold that. But don't do anything. Don't do anything because we'll come after you. And they don't. They go, oh, I'm quite happy here. Got my mates. We can talk about what podcasts we've listened to this week. We can go and listen to a load of banal new age nonsense. We can all hold hands and everything's fine. And that's the trap.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot to unpack here. I had a feeling that you'd unload like this, so I'm really glad that you've.
I'm not unloading. I'm just giving. I mean, you see, the thing is, Jay, I'm not trying to please anyone. Yeah. I'm telling people what they need to hear. Because if they don't hear it now, it's too late, Yeah. I can be engaging and we can talk about loads of different things, but I thought you wanted to talk about what was important.
Yeah, like I was saying, I sort of wanted this to be something that we could share to cut through the noise and sort of get to the point.
That's why I'm saying what I'm saying.
Yeah, because I thought when I
challenge themselves.
When I originally reached out to you, I mean, there's so many topics we could have gone into all of it, but on your website, you've kind of put everything already into segments. So what's the point in sort of going over? It's already there, it's done. And windowsontheworld.net.
Yeah, so, you're aware of the material, which is great.
Yeah. Type in whatever, I often go on there and I type in New Age just because I want to see if you've done anything else,
Yeah.
And it's all sort of there. So yeah, what I wanted to do really is sort of just cut through it and because I try and have these conversations all the time, and I'm still piecing it all together. You're a seasoned vet in this exact specific topic, so for me, I'm still kind of learning on the job, but I can see it. I can see what's going on.
Well, you've got the right perspective. I mean, this is the thing you see. I mean, I've had all these attacks before. I know how bad the system is and what they're doing because I've experienced it. So I'm only telling you what's out there, and I'm not trying to build a career. I could have done that. I could have gone into the infotainment business and be very well off. I know that because I did have chance to do it. I was at the People's Voice TV. I could interview any of these people. I can talk to anyone I want in the world. But what's the point? Because everyone else is doing it. So what's the point? Once you've heard it, you've heard it. Move on. Let's do something else. Let's try and get to the root of the problem and see if there is a genuine resistance still within the human race. That's what I want to see. I want to see if they can do it. It's a test. Yeah. So those that are lost and following nonsense are going to be lost until they find themselves. So my idea was, I did a show called The Order of Knowledge, and it's all about people who are actually keeping knowledge on the planet. Because if a cataclysm happens, which is a very good chance it could do, or whatever happens, the destruction of knowledge, the destruction of the minds, which is going on at the moment, there has to be people who can still keep the knowledge going. That's why I'm interested in history. That's why I made The Heretics of London, the Smithfield Martyrs. I'm making another film about the Shattered Isles, the ancient history of Britain. Because if you don't know this stuff, then you're going to be disempowered. And finding it is difficult. And my idea was to I thought, okay, what's the most useful way of doing it? Put it onto a website and do shows.
Yeah.
And I'm still fascinated by the information, you see. So I'm not kind of taking sides or I just say, okay, this is how it works. I know this is how it works because I've tried it out. You try it out, or you look into it.
Yeah.
I'm not getting up here pontificating. I don't want to be anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think that's the thing. This is why I sort of mentioned about the whole Christian view on the New Age, and they often go into this whole thing of Lucifer, the light bringer. You know, by sort of looking into these things, it's Luciferian. You know, the gods of the New Age you mentioned. I've watched that. I've watched it a couple of times actually. And I often go back. I'll go back a year, 2 years later, and see what I've missed and what I now know. And oh yeah, I heard that, and that makes sense. They talk about the Garden of Eden, right? And he's offered the fruit from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And what they're talking about is they're linking it, you know, the serpent with the Kundalini. So it's like this sort of awakening thing that's going on.
Well, that's wrong, you see, because that comes from Indian culture. So that's not in the Bible. So that's two different things. So that's typical. That's what they call synchronicity, not syncretism. They have this word syncretism. Now, I watched a documentary about there was a leader it was 5,000 years ago in what is now Turkey. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was in Anatolia on this really, really, it's called Nemrud, Mount Nemrud. And they found all of these huge heads there and statues. And it was this leader, and he had a religion. He had a syncretic religion. And the Romans couldn't beat them. And he was bringing together these religions. But what they do now is they use this syncretism to say, oh, the Garden of Eden and the Kundalini is nothing to do with it. What's that got to do with anything? Because the Hinduism is a completely different thing. I've spent loads of time in Hindu countries. And the Hinduism for Westerners is this little unicorn bubble nonsense.
Yeah.
All about Uchikama and all this. Hinduism is based around animal sacrifice, the worship of gods and demons, and festivals.
Yeah.
So if they do a lot of animal sacrifice. The biggest animal sacrifice, they can kill up to 100,000 buffalo. They stop them doing it for no reason, you see. So all the New Agers and the vegans, I mean, they follow this Hindu stuff, and it makes me laugh because Hinduism is about sacrificing animals.
Yeah.
Animals are sacrificed daily to Kali all over India and Nepal.
Yeah. Me went to India, and when I listened to, I re-listened to it again recently, the New Age interview you did with Tony.
Oh yeah.
6 years ago or so. And when you were talking about Nepal, and he was talking about when he went to Thailand, and you know, the sort of things that
you remember that? That's great.
Yeah, it blew my mind when I went over there, because I went over there quite interested in Hinduism. I've been to Buddhist countries, I've been to Hindu countries, and I went over there with all of these ideas. We went to Rishikesh, and I don't want to sort of generalize, but it felt like a bunch of people chanting it. That's genuinely what it felt like. And it was all
robotic.
Yeah, I did meet some genuine people, had some really interesting conversations. I was actually reading the book, The Holographic Universe at the time.
So that's just a kind of collection of what ifs, really. I thought it was a completely disappointing book, really.
Yeah, I got about halfway in, but I was sort of in that mode, you know, that kind of, we live in some, you know, simulated reality. I was sort of in that sort of...
That's another trap, you see. That's a massive trap. That's to get you to do nothing.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's to acquiesce in responsibility, actually.
That's sort of what I felt when I was over there, actually. And I saw it firsthand, and you see some...
What, you were with New Agers, you mean, or Hindus?
Sorry?
Were you with New Agers or Hindus?
Well, I spent a bit of time in various different places. I met all
Right.
sorts of different. We met some woman actually. She's been traveling around India for years and years. She called herself it was something like Universe or something, some wild name.
Yeah.
And we're sort of like, so how long have you been in India? She's like, oh, I've been here for years. Oh, so what do you do for money? She goes, I don't do money. And then next minute she's asked me to buy her a drink. So
Of
I'm
course.
like, yeah, you don't do
Well, I think
money.
another thing is if you go to somewhere like Glastonbury, you'll find loads of entitled New Agers, and there is people there with no money, but most of them move to places like that because they can indulge their narcissism and they can think they're spiritual by going around giving fake hugs to people and talking bullshit, and that's all they do.
Yeah,
There's no motivation to find the truth unless you're challenged.
yeah,
There has to be something that challenges you to find the truth.
yeah.
And if
That
you
just
haven't got that, you're just going to end up like that. Yeah.
Yeah, so that yeah, that's where I was sort of going. The gods of the New Age thing, they
Mm.
really talk about this whole, trying to become enlightened, not even enlightened, but asking these questions outside of their narrative essentially
Mm.
is Luciferian. And I'm just thinking, if that is Luciferian, and
Well,
if that,
it's laziness of language and meaning, really.
yeah, there's
You see,
lines that just
you
aren't
see, the
clear.
thing is that just to say that, I think it almost becomes like a robotic, the whole thing. Oh, it's Luciferian. You see, it's not. It's actually not looking at it objectively.
Because
Look at it objectively. You see,
there
that's
is
the
a
thing.
lot of truth in, like what you were saying about like meditation and go into certain frequencies.
Of
There's something there's something where
course.
we are all
But that's
connected in
not to
there.
do with group meditation. You see, there's
Yeah,
I made this point, Jay, a while ago. There's active and passive meditation. And what they do in group meditations, they get to go passive. There's a cult that I studied and actually interviewed their top yogini, and they're called the Brahma Kumaris. And they
yeah,
worship an entity called Bapdada, which is channeled by the yoginis. It's mainly run by women because the fella who started it in 1930, he made it um, a, a, basically it was a sisterhood, right? And all these gullible Westerners get involved in it. They have allegedly nearly 40 billion. Okay, where's it coming from? These places are being used by the UN. They're being used by big finance to get Westerners hooked on hopium. It's the destruction of their minds. And when I interviewed their top yogini, it was all translated into Hindi, and she sat there with a gormless stroke spiritual expression on her face. And the answers that came back were so banal, I was absolutely shocked. I thought these people are in perpetual arrested development and they will never face reality. And they have places all over the world. I went to one that they were building in Nepal, actually. None of the locals knew where the money was coming from. Same with the Buddhist monasteries. They all say the money's coming from America or the CIA. All of them say that. I don't know whether it's true, but where do these big glass marble palaces full of gold that have hundreds of kids running about, where do they come from? Who's paying for it? Who's paying to get people into these places?
yeah,
So that whole thing is being used for, well, it's being used for objectives that are useful.
yeah. Wow. Well, is it a good time to leave it there, or do?
Yeah. I mean, I hope this is informational because I'm past the point of trying to hold back, as you can
Yeah,
probably see.
yeah,
I mean, I'm not bothered really whether people take it or leave it. You
yeah.
know,
I've
take
been
it or leave it.
a little bit choppy here because you go very deep into each topic, right? So
Yeah.
every question it can continue to go. Um, but there's so much I want to ask you. There's so
Yeah.
many more topics I wanted to
I
go
think it's
into.
been really interesting. We should do it again and maybe focus on something. That'd be great. I'd love to do that.
Yeah, no, yeah, I really appreciate that. Yeah, that'd be amazing. But look, I appreciate all your work. There's
Thanks,
a lot
Jay.
of people that do.
Mm.
I can honestly say, I say this to a lot of people, and there's others that have listened to me and
Mm.
followed what I've said, and they would agree as well. And that's, I think, when I started to get into your work, it's probably
Mm.
about 4 years ago, maybe.
Right.
That's when I started to actually get some sort of like foundation. So when you're in this world, it's a big old world, and there's always conspiracy, or there's this new thing, and you learn this and this new topic. It's very scattered. It's all over the place. But I found that I started to actually get a bit of structure.
Yes.
And that's what I found. Your work essentially was the kind of cornerstone of that, is really kind of breaking it down into these simple parts, and it all leads back to the same thing.
Yes, that's what I wanted to do, Jay, and it's all linked together. So I'm keep adding to it, because there's details will come in, but once you know roughly and on a practical level how it works, then a lot of this other stuff becomes a distraction. That's the point, that once you can grasp that this is not a complicated thing. You know, I love looking at the so-called mysteries, and when after you've been digging in there for years on end, you think, well, there isn't a mystery really. Do you know what I mean? The mystery is that they're just not telling you what they're doing. That's the mystery. They're not telling you what they're doing. So I'd like to come back and talk maybe about other things, you know, maybe about Martinism, about the Rosicrucians, the Rose Cross and stuff like that, because this ties into things that people never talk about. They might talk about Rosicrucianism on a broad, but it's what these things are used for that's interesting. Because it's all about systems of management systems. That's all it is.
And I think there's something powerful in knowing that a lot of these things have, you know, there's nothing new under the sun, and history is repeated in many ways. There was a history pre this situation. I think people get so caught up in now that, you know, by looking back, you can almost kind of see the moves, and you can see, you know, how they've tried certain factors before, how they've changed religions and introduced religions and changed cultural beliefs. And, you know, people have moved around. Immigration's not a new thing. It's been going on for thousands of years. And when you actually start looking back, you can see that this isn't necessarily new, and it's not even as scary as you'd be led to believe.
Well, once you know something, once you know how something works, then it removes the fear, which is what I was saying about the inner integrity. Because once, you see, I've got to the point now where nothing really scares me. What does scare me a bit are the public and their gullibility. That scares me. What the globalists are doing doesn't scare me at all. Absolutely doesn't. I find it an affront, and it's an audacity, and you can say it's extremely evil, but it doesn't scare me. But what scares me is that the public are going to enforce it on themselves and drag me and everyone else down with them. That's what's scary, if anything.
Well, Mark, pleasure. Anytime, any topic, you're welcome on.